All right, peace to the planet. If there's never been more proof that I don't have a budget for what I'm doing, look at this lighting. Welcome to Bishop Chronicles. Subscribe and contribute, please. Um, I have a really interesting conversation, so I'm just going to jump straight into it. I was on the phone with my boy the other day, and we were just having a random conversation. This wasn't like, you know what I'm saying, I'm bitter, I'm mad. We were just having a conversation. He was mentioning something that he had seen on um, YouTube. No, Instagram. Instagram. And I was like, hey, you know what I just realized? He was like, what's up? And I was like, I have never heard anybody use the phrase toxic femininity. I'll say it again because I know some of you didn't hear me in the back. Toxic femininity. Mm. And I was like, why is that? And I'm serious. I'm asking as an aspiring philosopher and aspiring stoic. Does it exist? Does it not exist? Like, I don't know. And like, cause like I've never heard anybody use it. Look at Bruce. This is my little dragon. My little dragon Bruce. Anyway, Neem Forest, in case you were wondering. You're welcome. So I start, having this conversation with him. He's like, I don't think I've ever heard that word either. And I was like, yeah, like, does it exist? Is that why we don't hear it ever? And so I started asking my male friends, and none of them had heard the word used, I don't believe. Somebody did say they had heard it one time, but I think they were talking on the phone to me. I don't think it was an in-person thing. Long story short, so I went on to Bishop Chronicles on Instagram and said, what do you think about this word? Does it exist? Let's take a look at some of the screenshot responses. I'm not going to tell everybody's, handle, because people are weird. I don't want people starting to dox other people and being hella stupid. You know what I'm saying? Made in the 70s cup from the therapy store. Nobody tells me to say these things. Nobody pays me. I just do. So, anti-colonial auntie. I'm only saying her name because she said I could. She said, I've never heard it either, not even in my studies. I don't think you can have this conversation without also examining race, class, or colonial power. What I've witnessed are some women uphold and support patriarchy and colonialism. Think Trumpettes, TERFs, although I don't know what a TERF is. Forgive me, I meant to look that up before this started. There are women that derive their power from their proximity to men in power. Consider people like Kim Kardashian when she said nobody wants to work anymore. Her power came from her parents' money, her husband's money, and then through her exploiting working class people. Her power gave her the platform. I was like, okay, that's lit. There's one dude was like, this is a new one on me. I'm gonna have to check it out. So then another dude jumps on and he says, toxic femininity can manifest across all races, classes, and nationalities. It is not confined to any specific demographic, as it stems from societal expectations and cultural norms around gender roles, which are present in varying forms worldwide. These behaviors and attitudes can arise in any community or culture where traditional or restrictive notions of femininity are promoted regardless of socioeconomic or racial backgrounds. Sounds like my man went to college. You know what I'm saying? Salute to your alma mater. You hear what I'm talking about? Another dude said, I don't believe in either. Calling energies quote unquote toxic because some people aren't disciplined is low vibrational. I'm not saying I disagree with that, but I am saying, like, so if you don't use the word toxic, you use something. So maybe there's just like, is it a comfort thing? You need to wrap it up in a different kind of blankie? Like, I don't know. And then another dude jumped on and said, I only equate toxic masculinity in regards to upholding behavior which perpetuates patriarchy. So I would think the same thing for femininity. How is this woman weaponizing her femininity to perpetuate patriarchy? My only theory on that is like, is she conscious of it? And why is there an assumption that she wouldn't know that she was weaponizing it for her femininity and her feminine agenda if she knew who she is and what she wants, right? Like, I'm not sure. There were a lot of amazing people who posted. One, I thought this was really interesting. I personally have benefited from aspiring to grasp a quote unquote bell hooks intersectional feminism perspective, and recently have been looking into definitions from the wellness community. And then she says, quote unquote, toxic femininity is a form of internalized misogyny which involves restricting yourself to stereotypically, quote unquote, feminine behaviors in order to appeal to men, unquote. This kind of behavior is rampant and accelerating. There was so much concern when magazines could airbrush a model to raise the standard of pressure into women buying makeup. Now online filters has plastic surgery on the rise. Nothing about this is sustainable, right? Which I thought that was powerful. And then hold on. Then this person said, of course this is a real thing. You have extreme forms of feminine. I would call that toxic femininity and not feminism. I think the reason it isn't used as much is let's be honest, toxic femininity isn't causing mass deaths. It's a result of those mass deaths caused by toxic masculinity. That's kind of hard, right? But I would actually contest this idea of toxic femininity not causing mass deaths, because everybody in the hood knows a dude who got shot over a girl who was playing games between two dudes, and somebody caught that ratchet. You know what I mean? I have a PhD from the University of Namin. And so I'm serious about that. I'm serious. That's a body count nobody even wants to talk about in the hood. And I believe absolutely that toxic femininity is a thing, and that is one of its more subtle expressions in the black and brown communities. You know what I mean? This one was kind of deep, hard hitting, and dare I say a little politically charged here. And I don't care about none of that. You know what I'm saying? We say what we want to out here. I think some people also see feminism as having a dotted line to toxic femininity, but I have never considered myself a feminist because of the feminist movement exclusion of black women. So I can't really say. But also, what does toxic femininity look like? For me, it's all the women with pink vagina hats going to Women's March, but never caring about black folks dying at the hands of cops, brown kids who were dying, or who were dying in camps at the border, Palestinian kids murdered, etc. But to someone else, it could mean the arguments with his ex about visitation. To me, it's about using your power to inflict harm. The only women collectively, typically, who can use their femininity to cause harm don't look like me. This was posted by a black woman. And yeah, I mean, like, there was some dopeness on here. You know what I mean? There was some dopeness on here. This guy posted something cool. The psychedelic athlete, who's a jiu-jitsu guy that I don't know. But he has a pretty cool page, and we don't even really chop, but he saw this and posted, so I thought it was cool. The argument against this would be just like the claim that only whites can be considered racist in our power structure. Seems like taking a bit too many liberties when it comes to language, and is a sacred or scared biased overcorrection. It's all a gray area, perhaps with men a bit darker shade of gray. I'd rather focus on what is generally toxic and not try to pin it down or drag anything else down into the mud with that word, especially if it's going to take over how we associate anything to do with the word it is attached to. And I was like, yo, that's pretty deep perspective, brother. You know what I'm saying? I really did appreciate that. However, as someone who has read Neely Fuller's book, the textbook on white supremacy, right? And this is a real thing. You need to read that book, right? Because when we talk about these things, it's hard, right? Obviously, for human beings to communicate well, at some level, we need to be speaking the same language, right? And on some level, if we're really trying to understand each other, we need to be able to open and read our own minds, other books and ideas, right? Neely Fuller Jr. is the guy that really talks about white supremacy as a system. He invented this idea, I believe. I'm 99.9% sure I'm right about that, but who knows? My point is, right, that he said that, racism, aka white supremacy, is a whole system. And I'll leave it up to you to look into that, or maybe see if there's discussions of him on YouTube or something. But what I will tell you, and Dr. Frances Cress Welsing wrote a book off his book called The ISIS Papers, and it was her work that really kind of took the discussion off. This thing about like that only whites can be considered racist is about this: that racism as a power structure, black people cannot be racist because they never have the power to enact like a law, right, or whatever that can get white people killed at will. But the reverse is true and often plays out. I used to think that Neely Fuller Jr. was 100% right on that, but I don't feel that anymore. And it's because I've always struggled with what it means when black people are able to use their power in a particular moment. Like, why do we not call that racism? And I also think that it's interesting because while people say, well, we can't be racist when they use the Neely Fuller argument, nobody says what the word should be. When it's done, by us, it should be called there is no thing. And what I think this comes down to is this thing where it may not be true in the macro, but it is true in the micro, right? So yeah, there's not enough black influence, let's say, in court or in mainstream television or whatever to tell more authentic stories, to have more balanced conversations about race, law, politics, sex, war, entertainment, whatever, okay? Can't do it. But if a school that has a lot of blacks has a kid who's white there, and that kid gets beat up in the hallway or gets robbed and nobody does anything, like what do we call that, right? So I think that while it's true in the macro, it is not true in the micro. It is not true in the micro. But I'd be willing to hear from anybody who knows more about Neely Fuller or Dr. Frances Cress Welsing or that particular kind of idea. And I guess my thing is, even if I'm wrong, I just want to know what we call those moments and how do we acknowledge injustice within our community towards any other community that's not black. What do we call that if we don't call it racism? And I'm not saying we have to. But anyway, so what ends up happening though is I got two really cool messages. Let me see if I can find this one though, because I it's important to me that I note this person because I actually don't know him. But I appreciated the hit up in terms of intent, right? Come on, broski. Come on. My phone is trash. Like for real. Like for real. Come on, man. Bring this up. Let's bring this up. Oh man, I'm blowing it. So anyway, this one woman sent me some stuff on feminism and patriarchy, and she was like, yo, like, would you be down to like read this, watch it, whatever? And I said yes. Now I hadn't done it only because I was running so crazy in the last few days, cornering and doing like jiu-jitsu related work. Oh man. Oh, there it is. Okay. So she sent this thing about toxic masculinity. Oh, no. She said, hi there. I hope this is okay, but your post about toxic masculinity and toxic femininity struck a chord with me. You might like this content here. It's not strictly femininity, but she always has really thoughtful and interesting things to say about all sorts, all based on her experiences as a psychologist. I think you run male support groups, and I think she does too. Anyway, I hope you like it. So I haven't watched it, but I'm saying that I haven't watched it only because I had to watch something else that was sent to me. And this was sent to me by someone I will name, named Anti-Colonial Auntie on IG. And I've been going back and forth with her on so much random hip hop stuff and then like educational stuff. And she was on this Anti-Colonial Auntie kick long before Kendrick Lamar. Like for real. Anyway, so she sent me because she had said I had said something a while ago about relationships, and she suggested that I read Bell Hooks. But I told her I'm running around. Plus, I have this other reading list. I am gonna read Bell Hooks. I know that I should have by this time in my life, but I haven't. So, like, I'm gonna look into it. You know what I'm saying? Holla at a scholar. You know how we do West Side. And I was out. So what she did is she sent me this film called Feminist on Cell Block Y, which is on YouTube. I encourage you to watch it. And it's about a guy named Richie Reseda, who goes to jail for a robbery. It's a documentary. And while in the clink in Soledad, you know what I'm saying? He comes across the works of Bell Hooks through his girlfriend, who he was with before he got locked up in the clink. And then he read this book called The Will to Change, which is one of the first books people suggest to me. So that'll probably be the first book that I read of Bell Hooks stuff. And then it's about toxic masculinity and how this dude's a feminist and the clink. And I was just kind of like, I mean, I'm still blown away that men call themselves feminists. I'm blown away by it. And I'll talk about that in a minute. When he gets into toxic masculinity, right, he kind of outlines these three kind of main cornerstones of toxic masculinity, which are violence, right? All kinds of violence, but especially obviously for and towards women, you know what I'm saying, or on and towards women, right? Objectifying women, you know what I'm saying, pimp culture, player culture, whatever, and then money, right? And I agree that all those things suck. I don't think too many people would say that it's lit, right? But then, man, they started losing your boy kind of. Because then he starts talking about how, like, sports are a vehicle of so much toxic masculinity. And I'm just kind of like, yo, man, like, first, like, on the real, and maybe by the time I finish reading Bell Hooks' work, I might be sitting here telling y'all that I'm a feminist. But I doubt it, dog. You know what I'm saying? It's unlikely. It's unlikely. But what I'm saying is, he said that sports was a part of this. And I'm like, yo, man, like, in the push to make the bad men good men, do we want to just, like, throw out the entire baby with the entire bathwater and just, like, the males of almost any given species roughhouse? Yeah, this is what they do. It's what they do, right? And this idea that being a football player, because he was talking about, football players, like, oh, it's this whole thing of, well, even if, whatever else is going on, I can beat your ass and that makes me cool in the hood. And da-da. Everyone knows that that's a real thing. Not only in the hood, but in, like, almost all societies, right? It's an absolute real thing, and I will not pretend that it's not. But to suggest that we just, like, and he didn't say it outright, but it was like sports shouldn't exist. Like, that was the under vibes. He didn't say we don't need to get rid of football, but what we need to do is, I didn't hear that, or at least if he did, maybe I missed it. You feel me? But, like, the way what I took away from that moment was that sports were not good. And when you hear a lot of people talk about men today, they'll be like, oh, a lot of these guys in the patriarchy are doing jiu-jitsu, it's the grappling is bad, UFC is bad, and I, for one, am not having it. And I'm just like, yo, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, martial arts, when combined with the philosophical framework, is really good for all of society. All of society. And I understand why it's seen that it's not. I understand when you see the UFC bros screaming, bashing beers on their head, writing "just bleed" on their chest. I get it. But what aspect of mainstream anything is really conveyed right? You know what I'm saying? What aspect? It's not. What I'm saying is, as a jiu-jitsu practitioner and teacher and lover of all martial arts history and styles in general, right? I think that martial arts are one of the best things to combat toxic masculinity, because it teaches a human being to be better about themselves, right? And to love and to protect themselves and their community, right? With limits, right? A lot of people in this movie, and again, it's on YouTube. You should look into it. What's it called again? Feminist on Cell Block Y, right? Like, I get it. You're in the hood. You're getting beat up. And this dude said, like, oh, mama loves you. Like, his mom would be like, oh, mama loves you. You're a good person. Da, da, da. And he's like, oh, mama loves me. Taking hella beatings, right? And, right, it's not that he shouldn't be violent. He should know how to defend himself and then stop. He should know how to defend himself responsibly and then stop. As well as work on better communication, as well as use the system inside. And nobody talks about how the system failed all of these kids, at least in the documentary, right? Like, nobody talks about that. The schools don't help young boys engage each other in really good ways. The schools don't help young men or young women see themselves or society in a better way, right? And the families are broken, right? And nobody goes to church or the masjid or the synagogue anymore. And so these fundamental things, even when they were being violated back in the day in different generations of America, at least we knew they existed, right? Yeah, I'm violating the 10 Commandments right now as I fill in the blank, right? But if these kids don't even know what the 10 Commandments are, and like, meh. Now you might say, well, who cares? They should know what the 10 Commandments are. We shouldn't impose religion on them. We shouldn't. But if you don't guide them at all, you get what we have right now. I worked in the schools. You can't tell me. I worked in charter schools and public schools. Oh, yeah. And I saw some fucked up shit, my friends. I saw some big systemic failures. And I saw kids who were brilliant not graduate and flounder into the streets. And I saw kids who were lucky enough to graduate just get left in the cold. I saw a lot of different kinds of failures. Right? But I'm not going to say that all of those failures are patriarchy. I'm not going to say that all of those failures are patriarchy in and of itself. And I'm also, back to my point about sports, man, I'm not going to suggest that we don't have sports. I'm just going to say that we have sports with more ethical dialogue. Right? Who is you know what I mean? Like, when you look at Mike Tyson, you see Cus D'Amato. Now, Tyson was bonkers for most of his life. Some would say he's bonkers now. But what I will say is that Mike Tyson is incredibly brilliant, right? But he's a product of being taught wrong and left to himself. And it's just through a miracle of God that he's achieved all of this stuff that he's done, right? Come on, man. And so, like, I told you, I'm not a champion of, I think here's what people missed, man, when I did this. I said, and if you agree that toxic masculinity exists or doesn't exist, what no one spoke to was, how do we get beyond each so we can just be better for each other? Or something to that effect. The video's on IG. You can see it. So I wasn't coming in here trying to kick up dust. And I want to thank everybody who posted for not getting into weird arguments, even if they challenged each other on certain things. Right? But I remember there was one person who posted, said it doesn't exist, and said something like, oh, and everything's not just a one-to-one. You ever heard of the yin and the yang? That never come up in school? Yeah. And then a little beep, boop. Come on, man. But then, even still, that wasn't enough for me. And I said, you know what, man? Let me lean back and get deep with it. Let me see what AI is talking about. Let me see what AI is talking about. So I jump on to Claude, right? And Claude, for people that don't know it, is way better than ChatGPT. Again, nobody tells me to say these things. CLAUDE.ai. Claude.ai. And I said, hey, man, what's up with toxic femininity? Is it a thing? And then, like, how would we know it and see it expressed if it does exist, right? I'm just reading what Claude said to me. If we define toxic traits as behaviors and attitudes that are harmful to oneself and others, then yes, there can be toxic expressions of any gender-linked behaviors or expectations. The key difference in how these terms are discussed often relates to historical power dynamics and to social structures. Some commonly cited examples of toxic feminine behaviors / expectations might include the following: using emotional manipulation rather than direct communication, weaponizing victimhood or tears to control situations, enforcing rigid beauty standards on other women, competing through indirect aggression and or social exclusion, defining self-worth primarily through relationships or appearance, using children as pawns in relationships, shaming other women's choices around career / family balance. As for combating both types of toxic behavior to improve dialogue, we can all do the following. 1. Focus on specific behaviors rather than gendered labels. 2. Acknowledge that harmful behaviors exist across gender lines. 3. Create space for vulnerability and authentic expression regardless of gender. 4. Challenge rigid expectations for all genders. 5. Promote direct, honest communication styles. 6. Recognize that individual behavior exists within larger social contexts, for real, right? And work to understand the root causes rather than just the symptoms. And then I asked for a Stoic perspective on that because, I'm an aspiring Stoic. From a Stoic perspective, the core issue relates to virtue and character, behaviors that align with or deviate from wisdom, justice, courage, and self-control, which are the foundations of Stoic philosophy. The Stoics would likely encourage examining these issues through the lens of what we can control, our own responses and behaviors versus external factors. Ooh, so here comes Claude with the slam dunk at the end. So anybody who was in my DMs trying to be like, oh, you chose violence, and you smarter than Claude? You might be. But not today. You know what I'm saying? And I just want to thank everybody for being a part of this conversation. I intend to have more conversations on the podcast with women. If you have ideas and things you want to send me about this idea and discussion or other ideas and discussions, please do it. I can't swear I'm going to watch, read, or respond to all of it, but I promise I will try. I promise I will try. I promise I will try. Please subscribe. Pass it on to your homies. You know what I'm saying? Don't defund the DISA. You know what I'm saying? Don't cancel DISA. I just got here on Substack. You know what I'm saying? Help a player out. And let's have better, more authentic discussions. And I hope that you understand that everything I'm trying to do with this podcast is just have discussions. I don't think I'm nobody's guru. I don't think I'm nobody's like super ascended sensei. I don't think that I'm just a guy on the earth trying to figure it out before I die. I swear to God, that's it. And I'm trying to do it with wisdom and compassion. And I'm trying to learn about myself and the world as I go through it, man. That's it, right? So I appreciate everybody who hit me up. I appreciate everybody who, tried to share things with me, right? And I look forward to some of these upcoming episodes where we expand on this and other things, right? Until then, man, stay healthy, stay stoic, and holla at a scholar. Oh, you know what? I'm tripping. I was getting ready to throw W's and it's not even really time for that. It's not even really time for that because I gotta tell you. I need to tell you that I'm doing this thing at Albany State University on the 27th and the 28th. It's going to be off the chain. I want to thank Dr. Tiffany Polk and everybody over at Albany State University and students, faculty, and staff who had a hand in this to come through. There might be, and it's a might, we're working on stuff, but Daim Shabazz from the Chess Drum, he might be there on one of them dates. You know what I'm saying? To drop some extra jewelry, sprinkle y'all. You know what I'm saying? With a few extra gemstones for the cranium. But yeah, it's gonna be lit. I'm looking super forward to it. You know what I mean? And then I also just want to say thanks to everybody in the UK out there at Leicester Shoot Fighters for having me out for my seminar. It was fresh. And I also want to thank everybody at Immortal Martial Arts, IMA Leeds, man. You guys have You made my trips to the UK so amazing in the martial arts perspective. And I can't forget Gentle Apparel and my boy Glenn over at Gentle Apparel. You know what I'm saying? That's Roger Gracie's clothing line. If you're not up on it, go cop. And so, with that, salute then. And a West Side.